We have a very special guest speaker, Barry Hinckley, who will be running against Sheldon Whitehouse in the 2012 election. Barry?
I'm going to explain to you a little bit about my plan, a little bit about my campaign, and tell those of you who haven't seen me before, in fact, who I am. I'm Barry Hinckley. I grew up in a manufacturing family here in New England, and I learned the hard way watching my father and my grandfather struggle to make stuff here in America. Every single year, it got more difficult to make stuff. The government was all over our back every step of the way. My father would come home repeatedly, whether it was the EPA, whether it was OSHA, whether it was the IRS, whether it was the Department of Labor. Always the government was bringing bad news to our family, making it more difficult to put people to work. And let me give you an idea of what we did. We live in a maritime state here, and we built boats. Our smallest boat, the Bermuda 40, took 10,000 hours of labor, of quality craftsmanship, New England labor to put together. That labor provided a quality product that was consumed around the world. Not only did it put people to work, but it put food on people's tables and paid their mortgages for people here in New England. Well, what happened when I joined the family business in Newport in 1991 was the luxury tax was enacted. Remember the luxury tax? That was the get-the-rich-quick scheme by Dan Rostenkowski and the rest of the folks in Congress. Well, what happened was no rich people suffered. In fact, what really happened was people that were building our boats suffered because the rich people just stopped buying boats. They didn't lose any money, but they saw it as a sin tax. They'd already paid all their taxes, a lot of them in most cases, and they had money left over that they wanted to buy a boat with. Well, when the government came along and said, it's a sin to buy a boat and we're going to charge you an extra 10%, boat sales came to a halt. We stopped building boats. The rich didn't suffer, the people building the boats suffered. Well, at that time, I was forced out of the family business, not by my father telling me to leave, but by the fact that there was no work, because we weren't building boats. So I left the family business. As the Rhode Island story goes with our children, I got a job out of state. And that's the way it goes. I travel here around Rhode Island. I have been for the last 7 or 8 months. And what I hear from people is, over and over again, that their kids are gone. The kids are no longer in Rhode Island. They had to leave for work. And one of my goals as a father, I feel it's my responsibility to raise my children in an environment where we have a chance for them to succeed and thrive. So one of my overarching goals as a U.S. Senator is to help foster a state and a thriving economy so we can create enough jobs to keep our children. Doesn't that make sense? That we have a state where we can create enough jobs that our kids can stay if they want to. So I was one of those kids that left. And I went to Boston. I was lucky enough to get a job for a company based up in Boston in the marine industry, in the digital charting and mapping industry. And I self-taught myself computers. When that company got bought, I ended up founding my own company. And I grew that company up from 1999 to what today employs almost 180 people, from zero, from an idea. And here's where success comes again, because successful people are the people that bought my family's boats. The reason I was able to get a good education is because successful people bought my family's boats, and we had money to eat and put our, and my father put us through school and all the things that go with making a good living. Well, again, when I started my company, there wasn't a bank on the planet that would loan me $1. I didn't have any money. I had a dream. Well, once again, successful Americans invested in my business. And I returned them a great return on their investment. And I hired kids from Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And I watched these kids in my company rent their first apartment that their parents wasn't paying for, buy their first car that the parents didn't give them, very often meet the first love at my company, fall in love, have their first child, buy their first home, pay their first mortgage, all because of the dream that we had in the company we built. That is the American dream. So when I retired from that business, I had already moved back to Rhode Island about 1.5 years ago. I looked around, because generally an entrepreneur, when you're successful once, you do it again, because it's easier to raise the money. It's easier to attract quality people because you've done it once, and everyone wants to be on a winning team. And you know where the bumps in the road are. So that's what successful entrepreneurs do the second time. Well, when I looked around, I said, you know what? We've got a hostile president shouting from the rooftop saying, if you're successful, we're coming after you with the IRS. In fact, I'm hiring 16,000 more IRS agents to come get you. We have a hostile congressional delegation that generally have between very close to a 0 rating for the Chamber of Commerce. We live in a state that was just rated the worst place in America to open or run a business by CNBC. I said, you know what? I'm not going to go create more jobs and start another business in this environment because the government is not my friend. I said, I'm going to start a new business. It's called Hinckley for Senate, and I'm going to run and I'm going to put those buggers out of business. So that's what I've been doing since last April, and it's going very, very well. We're building a great team. I've got a good team here, Ryan and Tom. You may know a few of my other members. We're successful in raising money. Every quarter we're raising more and more, and it's really, really, really an exciting thing to be a part of. But I have goals, and I have goals as a U.S. Senator. This isn't just a job for me. I don't want to be a career politician. Career politicians are the problem. I'm a problem solver, not a problem maker. And I'm going to give you an example of some of the problems I will solve. I've already talked about the fact that I have a goal to use my influence to make Rhode Island a state where we can create enough jobs to keep our kids. But I have an overarching goal as a father. I have a will. I'm 45 years old. And nowhere in my will does it say I'm going to stiff my kids for a couple $100,000. Does anyone here have that will? You guys got a will that says you're going to stiff your kids? No one has that will. That's not how we operate. So why are we operating that way as a country? One of my goals is that we pass a country to our children that has money in the bank, not IOUs. We owe trillions and trillions in debt. Yesterday, our debt crossed the $15 trillion mark. Just to put that into scope for y'all, 1 trillion seconds. 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years. Jesus was here 2,000 ago in change. We owe a lot of money. We can turn this around, but we have to have goals to do it. I've never met someone that hit a goal that didn't have one in the first place. I've got a goal to do 2 terms because career politicians are the problem. And in 2 terms, by the end of my 2 terms, we will have a country with money in the bank for our children. And the great things about having goals, and I'm really good at hitting goals, because every quarter in my software company, we had a goal. And it was a revenue goal. And everyone in the company knew what that goal was. And we all had different roles and responsibilities, but we marched toward that goal. Well, the things that we need to do as a country to hit that goal of money in the bank for our children as we pass the country on to them are all good. And they are, more importantly, jobs. By the end of this campaign, people will know me as the job creator. And it's going to be a very simple choice. On the left, if you think more government, career politics, and more taxes is the way out of this mess, you have a candidate. The government sector candidate is Sheldon Whitehouse. And I'm the private sector candidate. And if you believe that growing the private sector and freeing up people to pursue the American dream is the way out of the mess we're in, then I'm your guy, because that's the life I've led. It's not Democrat versus Republican. It's government sector versus private sector. That is the way forward. And my goal as a U.S. Senator, in 2 terms, we have to completely get rid of the tax code. It is the problem. It's 80,000 pages of carve-out special interests and loopholes. And quite frankly, if you see what's going on in Washington, D.C., you realize they use it to sell favors, to raise money, to get themselves reelected as career politicians. We need a new, fair, simpler tax code. We also need to completely deregulate the employment process, making it easier to put people to work and get the government out of the way. The government is the elephant in the room when you hire someone. They are there standing, and then they wrap the whole thing in red tape. They make it hard to put people to work. We need to simplify that process. These are a couple of things I'm focused on.